Hi friends, and welcome back into my studio. If you are new here, my name is Tammy Ernest and I am a Longarm quilter, and here on my channel I like to share customer finishes as well as my own personal projects. Today I have the August Sew Sampler box to share with you. We have just finished August and are starting into September. Weather's feeling a little more fall-like. I hope you're excited about that. Not sure I'm quite ready for summer to end, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to enjoy each day as it comes. So the August Sew Sampler box, let me share it with you. The theme of this one is called Sewing Wild. There's always a good coupon on the back here. Let me see. Yeah, 20% off. So a great coupon always on the back side of that. So the Sew Sampler box comes once a month. It always has pre-cuts in it of some sort. This month there are 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 charm packs right here. This is equal to the cost of the box, not even counting everything else that's in the box. This right here is equal to the cost of the box. I do pay for this myself, so I'm giving you an honest review. I love the Sew Sampler box. I love this little surprise every month, and I always like to get just a little piece of the current lines that are coming out, and then if it's something that I'm really enjoying, then I can go purchase more. But I love to see the details of all of the newest lines coming out. So this one, this is Among the Wildflowers 2, so this is the second line called that. And let me find my card. Lost it here, so I can give you the designer's name. By Shelly Cavanagh. Ooh, yeah. All right, so Shelly Cavanagh, she's the one that did Barnstar Sampler, and now she's got her new one, maybe it is Wildflower Sampler. I apologize, I didn't look into that prior to. So 3 charm packs. I am going to open this up so you can see the fabrics. So I love the colors, darker blues, a little bit of aqua blue, some grays, and a charm pack. So there's always a pre-cut in here. So sometimes it's a jelly roll, sometimes layer cake, sometimes charm packs. So this time 3 charm packs. This is good and full. How many is this? Does it say? 42 pieces. So let's look through this. Wildflowers 2. I like the colors, very pretty. So the greens and the grays and the blues. See if I can do this nicely. So here's some more of the florals. Larger florals, medium florals. See if I can get them separated here. So you can see some of those. So pretty. Very nice. Okay. I like the colors. So those are all the white background. All of those have had white backgrounds to them. This one's a little smaller print. And then we move into, this one's got the blue background, some of the same artwork, same design, but with a darker background. This one has the lighter blue, almost an aqua tint, but not quite, just a lighter blue. Are several of these. A couple of those. And then this is a gray, 2 of those, and then here's the dark blue again. These are the smaller florals. You saw that we started out with some of the larger ones. That same one in the turquoise, kind of the lighter blue color. Here's a gray one. This is a tone on tone. This would make a great, even if you don't want the whole line, if you are looking for a tone on tone in gray, look at that. I like that. And then the same in the dark blue. So again, this one would be nice if you're doing, it's a nice blue color if you're doing Quilts of Valor, or if you're just looking for a nice dark background print. I like that one. Same print in the turquoise, lighter blue. And then look at this one. Darker turquoise, and then we have the blue printed on top of that. Very pretty. Like that. Like those choices. Oh, then look at this one. This is the blue background with the white. I like that. It's almost like stitching lines. Very pretty. All right, so the same in the, this is more of a lime green color. And then we have kind of the turquoise again. Then we have that dark blue with the turquoise color, aqua color on top. And then here we have it switched. We have the lighter background and the turquoise on top of that one. Then finally, this one is a lime green. And then the printing on top is it's a green, but a darker green. So lots of good choices there. Lots of fabrics if you are just looking for some backgrounds or some border prints. You've got some nice choices in that line there. So 3 charm packs. Like I said, that is the cost of the box right there. The fabric or the pattern that goes with that, this is called Rain Lilies, a table runner pattern, and that's what this looks like. This is exclusive to the box. The only way to get this pattern is with the box. This uses the 3, it does say only 2 are needed for this project, so you would have 1 left over, or you could make it larger. And then it does use the notion that is inside the box, and that is this 4-in-1 hexi ruler. Let me take it out of the plastic. This is a Creative Grids ruler. Every Creative Grids ruler comes with the insert that then has instructions on how to use the ruler. Okay, instructions on how to use the ruler. And then you can also use the QR code that is on there to see a demonstration of how to use this ruler. This ruler also has a demonstration listed on the Fat Quarter shop when you go to where this ruler is sold, and I will link that down below. There is a link to the Creative Grids YouTube channel that does show you how to use this ruler, so you'll want to check that out. This is 4-in-1, meaning it makes 4 different shapes. The size of this is 4.5, so it can use that charm square pack perfectly. 4.5 inches, so it makes 4 different shapes. Let's see if we can do this without getting my ring light in there. So you have your hexagon shape, okay? That's 4.5 inches. Then you have half the hexagon. So if you only did this part, you have this half hexagon, all right? Then you have a triangle shape right there. Then you have the diamond shape, 4.5 inches from top to bottom. So if you are using this to make the half hexi, that is 2.5 inches. So you can use that with a jelly roll, all your 2.5 inches. All your jelly rolls, you can use this for that. So that shape, if you are using this triangle, that's also 2.5 inches. So you can use that with a jelly roll. If you are doing the diamond shape, this also in this direction, you can see the diamond shape, but when I turn it this direction, that also will fit on a 2.5 inch strip of fabric. So the hexagon itself is 4.5 inches, but if you're doing any of the other 3 shapes, that is possible to be done on a jelly roll, 2.5 inch strips, okay? So if you have, so obviously this uses, this pattern uses this ruler. Anytime they include, a lot of times if they include a specialty ruler, they give you a pattern that uses that, but perhaps you don't like this, maybe it's just not your style. You can use this in so many different ways. I have made, I made a quilt several years ago that was a, let me just go grab it so I can show you. All right, so I went and grabbed this quilt. This quilt was a Missouri Star pattern, and it did use a half hexagon ruler. So what looks like large hexagon shapes are actually 2 pieces put together, okay? So if you wanted to do this same sort of pattern with whatever fabric you were doing, you could just do the half hexagon, and then when you cut those, they are then stitched on the diagonal. So you would have this gray shape with this red and black one. You're stitching this together, and then that one next to the next one, you're stitching that line together, and then it's done in rows. You're not doing any Y seams, you're not trying to match up any fussy points and stitching on an angle or anything. It is done in straight lines, and then just making sure you have your right fabrics lined up and laid out correctly, then you get that whole hexagon shape. This is one of my favorite quilts. I actually made this one after I saw a client had made it. And I said, I need a quilt like that. So I actually bought the same fabric and went and bought the pattern. But that's how you can use this ruler if you want to make hexagon shapes like this that look like they're pieced, you know, very fussy like that. It's just done in rows, and it's done with a ruler like this. So perhaps you don't like this specific pattern. You may still want to get this ruler or use this ruler. If you're getting the Sew Sampler box, use this ruler to make a quilt like that. Then you can also use the triangle or the diamond. So great tool, 4-in-1. You're getting all 4 of those shapes in one ruler. And like I said, every insert includes a QR code. You can scan it with your phone, you can watch that video, or you can go search for it. But it also gives you all the instructions on the insert on how to use that ruler, which is really great. All right, another thing. This time we have an air erasing Shoreline pen. So if you are needing to mark lines on fabric, this is another choice. Let me read to you. It says, planning out your stitches but don't want to leave a lasting mark, the Shoreline Air Erasable Pen glides across your fabric, smooth ceramic roller ball. If you've ever used a pen that kind of jerks as you're trying to draw your line, it's very frustrating. Giving you a crisp, easy to see lines right where you need them. Like footprints in a wildflower meadow, the marks gently fade away on their own within 2 to 10 days. It's perfect for making your mark without leaving a trace. So this one, you don't need an iron, you don't need water, you don't need anything. It's not erasable. It's just, it disappears in time. So that means that when you use this to mark your fabrics, you're not going to be able to mark them today and then stitch them a month from now. The marking would be gone. So this is as you're needing it, you would mark it, you would stitch your lines. But that's another great choice in markers. So you can see the ball at the end. All right. So how to use these 3 charm packs. If you don't want to use the ruler, if you don't want to use the pattern that they give you this time, what other choices do you have? There are lots of other choices. By getting these charm packs in the box, I have a wider range of other quilts that I can make. And this happens sometimes, not every time is a quilt that arrives in the Sew Sampler box one that you're going to enjoy making. Perhaps you don't like to make table runners. Perhaps you want to make a full-size quilt instead. You can always go back to the Fat Quarter Shop and look for charm pack or charm square quilt patterns on the website. Now you can always find ones that that you can pay for, but there is a whole array on the Fat Quarter Shop website of charm pack quilts that are free patterns. And I did print off some just so you could see. And the other thing you can do, well, let me just show them to you first of all. I didn't even print off all that were there. I printed off a couple that I liked and thought you might like as well. And I was also looking for ones that use 3 charm packs, because that's what came in the Sew Sampler box. So you may want to use all 3. This one is called Charm Pack Shortbread Quilt Pattern. Don't you like that? I like that quilt pattern. All right. Now, the fun thing about this is they come in different sizes. It comes in crib quilt size, lap quilt, twin, and queen. Okay, so for this one, you need, for the lap size, 1 charm pack that has print squares on it and 1 charm pack that is solid squares. So we're starting out with 3 that have what I would say prints on them, and then you could buy a coordinating fabric to go with the other to make the solid ones. And then you're pairing those up. But with all the different sizes, so like right now I have 3 charm packs that have prints to them. Then I could add 3 charm packs that are solid, and I could make a full size or a queen size quilt. So look at each of these patterns. They've got different sizes. So depending on what charm pack you have. Maybe you only have one charm pack and you want to make a quilt that you can use that one charm pack, add some other fabrics with it, and get a nice size quilt. Maybe that's a lap size, maybe that's a crib size, but there are lots of choices. So that's one, and again, that's a free pattern. There is also this charm pack Crispies. This one uses 2 solid charm packs and 2 charm packs that have prints on them, and that is actually for, this one may come in different sizes also, but I only printed off page 1. But look at that pattern. That looks like a fun one too. So that is an option. This one uses 3 print charm packs, and then you only need 1 solid charm pack, or you could use yardage, I would think, for this. And then that is for the lap size. This is Charm Pack Chili. This one would be very pretty in this fabric line because you're going to see it's going to be mostly the, and here's a bigger print. It's going to be mostly the fabrics that I just showed you. You're going to see all those blues and the grays and the greens, and then it's just a little bit of a white, and that could be a charm pack. That could be 5-inch squares of some other background print that you have. That doesn't have to be a charm pack, but then you can get a quilt like this and it would be beautiful in those blues and greens colors. So that's Charm Pack Chili. Let me see if I printed off any others, and again, those come in lots of sizes, so depending on what charm pack you have. Then I did print off one more. This is called Charm Box quilt pattern. This uses 2 charm packs and then a little bit of solid, and that is for, does it tell me the size? I only printed again, I only printed off page 1, and I don't see the size of the finished quilt on this one. So anyway, oh, there it is, 36 by 45. So this would make a crib size quilt. Uses 2 charm packs and then a solid, so perhaps you use the 3rd charm pack on doing something on the back, but that's what that one looks like. So don't be dismayed if you get your Sew Sampler box and you're looking and you're like, I don't really like that pattern, maybe I want to do something else. Go on the website and look for charm pack quilts, and a lot of them are shortcut quilts. They're not going to take a long time to make, and they're free PDFs, and so you can use the charm pack that you received and make a great looking quilt. So the last thing in the Sew Sampler box, a little less things in this time, but that's because we have 3 charm packs. We're getting lots of fabric in this one, and like I said, besides the cost of the ruler and the pattern and the pen, the cost of the box is right here in the 3 charm packs. So this, our box is also doing, the Sew Sampler box also is a quilt along, and that is the flowering quilt along. And this is what this month's blocks look like. And it's called Honeysuckle. So when I pulled my fabrics, I've mentioned before, I am using Things Above by Fancy That Design House. I have chosen my fabrics to kind of match up with the SKU numbers that are suggested for the summertime fabric, and then when on the back of the pattern it tells me which fabrics to use in the summertime, and I just go back to my key where I have made my Things Above key, and I pick those fabrics. When I did that this time, I did not like the colors that went together, so I decided to do my own. Now I did notice there are 4 centers to those 4 flowers, and they are all yellow. So I did have a gold in my fabrics, and I cut that. I don't have this done yet, but I cut that for, let me just show you one. It's kind of a jumbled mess, wasn't it? So I have made my half square triangle units. I have pressed those open. For the gold, I have not trimmed them up to size as yet. Now, so that's going to be my insides of all 4 flowers. Those are going to be my yellow centers. And then when I was looking at my other fabrics that I had and what went along with the gold, I decided to do all 4 of my blocks, all 4 of my flowers the same, instead of doing 2 in the darker and then 2 in the other as the pattern called for. So this was the fabric that I chose. I love the fall vibes I'm getting from this. And so these together I will have, and again, I don't have all this together yet, but this, the orangey rusty color will be the outside of my flower, and the yellow goldy one will be the inside, and I will make all 4 out of this. So I've already done all my gold half square triangles. They're piled up here. This is the rust color that's going to be the outside of all the flowers. And I have started stitching the rust ones together, and I just clipped this off my sewing machine so I can kind of show you how I chain piece when I am working on a project like this. So it starts, the beginning of this chain was a couple of the yellow blocks that I was still doing. So what I do is I stitch down one side of it. So I stitch down this side, and then I will move on to the next one. I stitch down this side, and then these 2 came back around. And so now I've done the second side. You can see the second. So I don't mark my line just because these pieces are small enough. I do have Lori Holt's Seam So Easy guide on the bed of my machine, and so a square like this I can easily see. That Seam So Easy guide is larger than this square is, so I can easily see at the end where the 1/4 inch line is. And so I line my point up with that 1/4 inch line, and then that means I'm sewing a 1/4 inch away from the diagonal. So I don't mark ones like this. If I'm doing a much larger block, you know, an 8-inch square, and I'm needing to stitch from diagonal to diagonal or diagonal across, I will tend to mark that one just because it's a little easier. It's bigger than what did I just call it? The Seam So Easy guide. It's bigger than that, and so it's easier just to mark it so I can make sure I'm stitching down that line. So these 2, it was these 2 yellow ones. It was the second side that I was doing. Then I picked up my rust ones, and I just put these right behind the others. I don't clip my threads in between. I don't pull it out real long. I basically just layer my next 2 squares right underneath my presser foot, and I just keep stitching and then keep stitching and then keep stitching. And this is just one side of the rust all the way down. And now when I clip this off right here, I left some still on my sewing machine. So I again didn't pull everything out, didn't clip my threads. I left a couple blocks still on my sewing machine. Then what I will do is I will clip these apart, and I'll start back, and I will do this one now. I've got the seam down this side, and I will run this one through the machine. And again, this will be clipped. I don't have my scissors right here. I just clip them for you. But so I would run this one through, and then I would run this one through, and I would run this one through, and I'd get all the way to the end. These would already be off because they've already got both sides on them. And then I would reach around the back of my machine, and I would leave one block underneath there, and I would clip off this one, cut these apart, trim between the stitching lines so that they're like this. I'd be trimming between the stitching lines and press that open. That's how I chain piece. So there's always something going underneath my presser foot. I always have something going. When maybe I finish up all these blocks and I've run everything under there that I could, that's when I would grab one of my leaders and enders, and I would just grab a little white square, a little pink square, or whatever color I'm working on at the time, push that under there next, and then I can reach around the back, clip the end of these off so that I can get all of these pressed and start doing those together. But that's how I chain piece. Saves thread, it saves having to pull out a bunch of thread, it saves any pulling down into that bobbin case, because when you're starting a fresh set of fabric, sometimes it pulls down. Now the time that I don't have something under there is if I'm putting a binding on a quilt, because I usually start in the middle of the edge of a middle. So here's the edge of my quilt. I'll start in the middle and start a binding to go all the way around. So I do need to take things out from under my presser foot to start that in the middle. Not a big deal. And that's usually a little thicker. It's not going to pull down into the bobbin case like it has a tendency to do sometimes if you just have a couple thin pieces of fabric going through. But anyway, okay, so those are the colorways I have chosen for my flowering block for this month. I will finish that up and show that to you soon. And we're coming along. What is this? Block number 5 already. Can you believe it? Block number 5. So, okay, that is all I have to share with you on the personal side today of my personal sewing. Let's move on to some customer quilts because I've got a long list of those to show you. This is Dyanna's quilt, and this is called Hourglass Scraps. This is a pattern by Corey Yoder. And there is a copy of the front and the back of the pattern. Get in real close so you can see all those hourglass units. Oh my goodness. So Hourglass Scraps. And Dyanna also used Corey Yoder's fabric called Cali & Co. A very springy, summery look, very bright colors, pinks and oranges, light greens and light blues, kind of a medium blue, and a very pretty line. And then the background fabric that you're seeing, the white, is actually a white with white polka dots, so a white on white, tone on tone, very pretty. So I don't even know how many hourglass units this is. I could count them, but I won't bore you with that. But let me see, maybe finish 3 inches square, something like that. Very, very pretty. Now the interesting thing about these hourglass units is that 1/4 of it is actually 2 fabrics together instead of just 1. So you'll need to get the pattern to see how Corey has you do those. But these are hourglass units, and I did bring a sample to show you how to make hourglass units. Well, before I get to that, I did print off a free PDF that is on the Fat Quarter Shop website if you are wanting to make hourglass units. So if you know the finished size that you want your hourglass units to be, then it gives you how large you need to cut your fabrics for that. Now this gives you the traditional method of making hourglass units, which means that you cut your fabrics and then you cut on the diagonal 4 ways, and then you stitch those back together, swapping the pieces so that you are you're actually stitching, you're stitching on the bias, honestly, and so you're cutting your fabric in 4 ways and then stitching that back together. A different way that I like to do it instead is I like to make half square triangle units first, and so this was from my recent flower and quilt along. These were some of the extra pieces, and I made these into half square triangle units. Now, to make a normal half square triangle unit, you would layer 2 fabrics, stitch down either side of the diagonal, cut that in between those 2 rows of stitches, and press it open, and you would have 2 of these. Now you can see I haven't even trimmed these up. The dog ears are still there. I would then trim these up to size. So when you get half square triangle units, in order to make an hourglass unit, you would take either the same 2. I have 2 of the same fabrics. The same, I mean, they could be the same. This could have been ones that I just trimmed off. So they could have been, they would have been together, and I've already pressed them open. But this could have been from the same 2 layers. I could have layered one of the dark print, one of the white print, layered them on top of each other, stitched on either side of the diagonal, cut that diagonal in half and pressed them open, and I would end up with 2 of these. Now, so I can use these to get an hourglass unit that then would have the same 2 fabrics in the hourglass unit. If I wanted to use a different fabric, make a 3rd one, make a 3rd print. So notice this has actually 4 plus your background fabric. If I wanted to make a 4th of it the dark, and then half of it would be the whites, and then this other one, I would just pick a different half square triangle unit that I've made, either with the same background, the same white, maybe totally different. But anyway, so if I'm going to use these 2, they're exactly the same. I have my half square triangle units. I then layer them so that my darks are on opposite sides. So I'm lining up the seam that I just pressed open. I'm lining that up, but I have the dark on one side, this one. The one on top, the dark is on my right, and then the one on the back, the dark is on the left. And so I layer those seams on top of each other, and then I'm going to turn this and I'm going to stitch perpendicular to that seam that's already there. I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from either side of the diagonal right there. You can color that, mark it if you want to with a friction pen, or you can just eyeball it. I have one of Lori Holt's the stitching guides, the flower shape ones on my sewing machine, and so it's nice and long. It's not just the lines that are on my sewing machine bed, but it's nice and long in a good circle shape. I'll link it down below so you know what I'm talking about. But those, so that when I lay this on there to stitch, I can see my 1/4 inch line way back here on the other side of the block. If you're using a much larger 2.5 or a 1/2 square triangle unit, then sometimes I can't quite see that and it's better to mark it. But something small like this, I don't even tend to mark it. I just stitched on either side of diagonal. Now when I do that, and I would then cut those open, when I open that up, I have an hourglass unit, and that's what I would have. Okay, so I don't like to cut these very small pieces, especially the smaller you get. I don't like to cut those in fourths and then try to stick them back together. They get pulled down into the bobbin case, so, you know, when you're trying to run them through, and it just becomes a mess. And I think this is much easier to work with instead of working with those tiny little pieces. Make 1/2 square triangle units, you layer them with the seams together, and then stitch on the perpendicular on either side. Now you can use the same PDF to get your sizing that you need, but then this is going to show you the traditional method where you cut them apart. I would say sew them first. Okay, sew your first unit, and then cut that apart, press those open, swap your pieces, and then sew it again. All right, so back to Dyanna's quilt. This is Cali & Co. fabrics. This is all hourglass units, but this one has 2 fabrics in each one of the fourths of the quadrants. Those are then alternated. One is vertical, one is horizontal. Vertical, horizontal, that's done all the way across in rows, and then the row underneath that is flip-flopped. No sashing in between these blocks. It's not, they're just all put together. And then on the outside edge, she has a skinny border here, probably a 2-inch border, and then more like a 4-inch border around the outside edge, all in that Cali & Co. fabrics. Very pretty. On the back, she asks for the Shannon cuddle, and this is done in the white, and this keeps the quilt just bright and light, and but snuggly at the same time. I love Shannon Cuddle. It's very nice. I also would refer you to the Shannon Cuddle website if you are interested in working with Shannon Cuddle. Recently in our Quilt Circle, in my Quilt Circle membership, I had a representative of Shannon Cuddle come on and do a lecture for us, an hour-long lecture. It was wonderful. We learned so much, got so much inspiration. But one of the things that she referred us to was the Shannon Cuddle website, and in when you go to their website, on the top right corner, it says Learning Center. And in that Learning Center, they have some tutorials that you can watch. They also have print-off guides that will give you ideas on how to care for your Shannon Cuddle, how to prep it, how to work with it, how to long arm it. There are so many good ideas there, and so I'll refer you to that. I have linked that down below as well. So Shannon Cuddle, this is in the white, and I think you can see the pantograph very well on this one. I did go with something pretty tight. We had lots of tight quilting on the top, or not lots of tight piecing on the top. A lot of seams there, and I just felt a tighter design, something that kind of just kept everything tight and pulled together, and just really nice. That way you're not having these, you know, seams pop up in different places, but just kept everything nice and flat. We got a nice cuddly Shannon Cuddle on the back that's going to keep it soft, and a pliable quilt and a snuggly quilt. This pantograph is called Lemon Peel, and how this one stitches, you have, let me move up here. So you have 3 loops, and then it does 3 loops right next to that. It echoes out on that last loop, echoes again, and then does 3 loops. So it almost looks like 3 leaves or something like that hanging down, but it's called Lemon Peel. And then 1, 2, 3 it moves itself back up, does 1, 2, 3, echoes that, echoes that. So it does do a zigzag fashion, not terribly deep, kind of shallow, but when you do that, then the other rows can nest in nicely. And I only made this about 3 inches tall. Now the Pantograph itself is smaller than that because this side of the Pantograph is a little lower, this side of the Pantograph is a little higher. So the total height from the very bottom of the bottom of it to the top is probably about 3 inches. So the lemon peel, one section of it, is probably 2 inches, all right? And I did use the Omni Natural White thread on the top with as small as the piecing is, as busy as the prints are. You really don't see the thread at all. It really blends in nicely. You really have to get in close even to see the Pantograph. And on the back, your thread just blends perfectly with the Shannon Cuddle. It soaks into that. Your nap on this is high enough that your threads really soak into that. It's the fibers that are standing up, and just the stitching is where you get the indentations in the Shannon Cuddle. So all of the stitching is done all the way on the backing of those fibers, and it's these fibers that are standing up and giving you that nice texture, and you can see all that, just beautiful. Really like that one. And then I went with that lemon peel. There are some florals in here, and I did audition some floral pantographs and kind of deciding, and I just at the end I decided I didn't really want to go with more floral prints on top of it. I wanted to do something soft. I wanted to do something with some movement in a circular shape, not angular. Sometimes when you're using hourglass units like this or anything that's got a sharp diagonal, if the Pantograph you're putting on there doesn't have that same degree of angle in your diagonals, then it can look a little funny. And so I'm hesitant about using an all-over pattern unless you really audition and really shrink down and know that your diagonal lines are going to hit where you want. It's going to be, because even if that diagonal line is off a little bit, because we've got the diagonals here, if I'm doing a Pantograph on top of that that's also a diagonal, if it's off at all, if this if the piecers stitching or piecing is off any, and then you add a diagonal Pantograph on top of that, your chances of it looking funny are pretty high. You're going to notice if anything is off. And while I think that is great if you're using maybe some custom quilting or some very, you're paying attention to it really, really closely, that you want to make sure all those lines are straight. Otherwise, I tend to, anything that's very straight like this, I tend to do something that's a little softer. Unless it's just a totally modern quilt where I feel like modern design on top of a modern Pantograph on top of a modern quilt top, or the fabrics, or it just depends. But on this one, I didn't feel that it was going to be complemented by straight lines. I felt the complement was using the inspiration from the floral fabrics, not doing floral, but doing something soft. The feel of the quilt, the colors of the quilt make you feel like a softer quilt. And so I wanted the quilting on top of that then to also give that softer, fresher feel, and not rigid, if that makes sense. So hoping that helps a little bit just in my thought process and what I'm working through to try to pick a Pantograph. Dyanna gave me full reign on this one, said I could do whatever I wanted. It was my choice, and so that's kind of the thought process that I work through. So this quilt measures 60 by 72, and again, here is the copy of that pattern. The fabric requirements say a layer cake, one layer cake, which would be 40 squares. Your layer cakes are 10-inch by 10-inch squares. It does say you can also use a jelly roll, 40 strips that are 2.5-inch wide. Either one will work for this one. Then you need background fabric, you need your inner border like you see, and the outer border, and then your binding and backing fabric. So very nice. So if you've got a layer cake, if you've got a jelly roll that you're wanting to use up, and it's all coordinated fabrics. You could do this scrappy if you wanted, but also if you've got some of those pre-cuts laying around and not sure how to use them, this would be a great use for that. And then get the pattern so you can see how Corey puts those two colors into one side or one quarter of that hourglass unit to see how she did that. So great work, Dyanna. I have two quilts to share with you that are Terry's. This first one is the Strawberry Garden quilt from Joanna Figueroa's book, Fig Tree Quilts, her book called Strawberry Garden, and this is the cover photo. And Terry was so nice to send me the book along as well, and said that she would not be doing any other projects from this, so she gifted it to me. Thank you, Terry. That's very kind of you. So Strawberry Garden, this is Fig Tree Quilts. The fabrics are Fig Tree Quilts, which is the Jelly and Jam line. There are also a little bit of Eyelet and Linen Cupboard, and then also some Honey Blooms fabric by Three Sisters. So a sampler, I do believe that she did this as a quilt along, if I'm correct in that, but lots of blocks. I like samplers like this, that all different sizes of blocks, and you're working on all different kinds of things, so you're not going to get bored with this when you have tiny, I mean, like these are probably 4-inch squares, the blocks here. You have some pinwheels, they're about the same size. You have very large block that's baskets, other flower blocks, the large strawberries. You can see the strawberries on that one. There's also some large strawberries here that are part of another larger block with the flower, some bow tie blocks. I mean, you just have a little bit of everything. So in this book, the sampler quilt that you're seeing here really uses all, yes, and I'm just looking here, it is run, you could do this one as a block of the month. It is all broken down into months, all the way through month 12, and it gives you the blocks that you can use. And let me just, finishing instructions. So about a half or 2/3 of the book is just taken up with this quilt, but then she has a whole section called Companion Quilts and Pillows, where she is then pulling out certain blocks that you used in this quilt itself, but you're using specific blocks to make other projects as well. So there's an Argyle sweater quilt, and I'll just show you a picture of that one. Very cute, very cute. So you get so much more than just this one quilt if you get the book. So that's the Argyle sweater. There is Cottage Blooms, very traditional looking quilt, very pretty. I like that sashing on that one. Let's see, there's a table runner called Daisies in a Row, and you can see that one. And that flower is in this quilt. I think it's at the bottom here. Ooh. There's one of those there. I think that's the only one. I thought there were two in this one. Let me pull this back up here. Okay, yes, there are two of those. There's the other one, and you can also see the picket fence. I love the picket fence, so cute. So many different blocks in this quilt, and then you can use some of those specific blocks in these other ones. She does have a vintage bow tie. I showed you the bow tie blocks, so using that block. There is a pillow using the basket. It's so cute. Love that. There's a crisscross pillow. And those blocks. The picket fence is across the bottom as well. The crisscross blocks, you're probably like, they're right there. Oh, here they are. Here's one. There's another one down there. Here's the bow tie blocks that I mentioned also. So many projects in this book. And then, of course, the 3 berries pillow. These pillows would be so cute, like they're here. And she puts them all together in a display. Wouldn't that be so cute? So the 3 berries pillow. So fun. So many projects, and you can see most of those on the back. So Strawberry Garden. Great book to get if you're wanting to just do the sampler quilt like this one is, and that's what Terry did. The quilt on this one measures 53 by 70 and uses all of the fig tree fabrics. It's just beautiful, beautiful fabrics, beautiful quilt. And then this large floral on the back, very classy. Really like that. All right, for the pantograph. Terry said, I like what's on the quilt in the book. So in looking at the quilt here, so I had to do a little bit of research. So I found the quilt in here, and I don't know that you can quite see the pantograph on that, but so I looked real close, and then I looked at the pattern inside the book. Thankfully, Terry had sent me the book. Inside, it lists the quilters of the different projects in here. And I discovered that the quilter for this quilt was Gina Tell. She is Thread Graffiti. If you follow her on Instagram, she also has a website. And in reading her, so I went through Gina's post on Instagram until I found where she had posted this quilt. And she mentioned in there what the pantograph was. And she said the pantograph on this one is called Bubble Clams, and that was done with So Shabby Quilts, So Shabby Quilting. And so then I went to that website and I found the Bubble Clams. So Shabby Quilting. It has some beautiful pantographs. I think I'm going to be getting some more. Some of you that like new things on your quilts, I think this would be a great option for us to look at some new pantographs on her site. So go check that one out, So Shabby Quilting, and tell me the pantographs that you like that you see on her website. So in looking at Gina's post, she said that when she quilted it, that Joanna really wanted it shrunk down. She wanted some very dense quilting. So in looking at the quilt, I think she might have even done it a little denser than I did. She said it took forever to quilt out, and I absolutely understand that. But I did print off the Bubble Clam so you could see what it looks like. So very similar to the Baptist fan, but notice how the clam shape, it's more of a clam shape rather than a rainbow shape, okay? Another one that I use is the Mini City of Fountains, and that one is more elongated like this. And so this, while it's very similar, this does give just a tad different look to your quilt. Also notice that in this, the sections of the clam are not uniform. So in my looking at it, the space here in this quilt, and that is built into the pantograph, that is not where the 2 rows come together. I see a little bit extra space in what I would say the 2nd and 3rd lines. It's a little larger there, and then between 3 and 4 it's a little smaller than between 2 and 3, so each row gets just a tad bit smaller. Now the top line here, you can see the red. The top line, the blue line just above the red, actually stitches out with the row above that. So while it's the top of that clam, it is actually the bottom row of the line that stitches out just above that. That's the exact same way that the Easy Baptist fan from Three Sisters, that's the way that is programmed, and also the Mini City of Fountains, that's the way that is programmed. So I like this in that you are not having to stitch back over any lines from the previous row in order to get this design. It works really, really well. I did this one, and you'll notice even in the picture, the points do not come all the way down to the top. And that is done on purpose, because if you cross over that point, it's very noticeable. If you leave a little bit of a space, nobody recognizes it, okay? And so done on purpose. But with this one, you have different, it's uneven between the different clam shapes there. So much more of a clam shape instead of a rainbow shape, and not quite the elongated one of the Mini City of Fountains. So I really like this one. She even has some others in this same design, but maybe with a heart in there. There's one that's a little more elongated that has kind of like a row of bubbles in there. So you'll want to check out So Shabby Quilting. But this is the Pantograph that I did. I believe that I left it as the size it was when it came into Pro Stitcher. When I brought it into Pro Stitcher, it is just one clam. That's all you get, okay? It's not an extended width. It's not 3 or 4 of them. It's one clam, meaning the 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of it, but that's all it is. And then when you repeat the design, so what I will do first is, well, I decide on the size that I want. So I first pull in just that one, and I kind of look at it on my quilt. Sometimes I will take off. On Pro Stitcher, what you can do is take, unhighlight, I guess, the stitch feature, and then it'll actually follow the path, the stitch line, but it will not be actually moving the needle. So that kind of gives me an idea of the size of the pantograph on my actual quilt. Sometimes I just eyeball it by, you know, holding my finger, okay, this is the top of it, and then moving my machine down. So on the picture, I'm getting the bottom of it, and I kind of see how tall it is. This one is about, I think it was about 4 inches maybe was the height that it came into Pro Stitcher, and I like that height, so I just left it. So then what I do, my area is already created for the size of my quilt top, always a little bit larger, and then I hit fill, and it fills up the space. Now when you use the fill feature, it only goes to the edges of the quilt, and so you'll have lots of blank space around the very edges of your quilt. And so I always then repeat the horizontal until I get it outside of that area. So I'll have enough fans all the way across, or enough clams in this way, all the way across that it goes outside the area that I have set. Then I will shrink the rows together, so the vertical, to get it to the spacing I want, because almost always they're going to be this far apart. Your rows are going to be very far apart. So I shrink down the space between, it's called gap on Pro Stitcher. I shrink down that, that gap till it's the size that I want. And then I repeat the vertical lines again, so that I fill it up beyond my area. Then I will crop my area to the outside edges, and then I clean up the edges, and then I save my workspace. So I like my quilting to go off either side, top and bottom. I don't want to fit a pantograph exactly from the top. Now this may be a little different, because some people like to have a pantograph where it's absolutely starting, the top of the pantograph is starting at the very top of the quilt, the bottom of the pantograph or of a certain row finishes right at the bottom of the quilt. I don't do that. I like the quilting to go off both sides and off the top. So you may have at the very top, you may have a clamshell that is just you know, part of the line. So you can see I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the lines, but you can see where the other one would be there. I make sure that it stitches those other lines there that would be down in between the clams, but I don't try to start the top line right there at the beginning. I like it to be already in progress, if that makes sense, both on the sides as well. And I do like to stitch off the edges of the quilt. I have people ask me sometimes, if you're not starting and stopping right at the edge of that quilt and tying off right at that point, don't the stitches come off the side? I've never seen it. I honestly have never seen the stitches come undone on the side. I do trim up the quilts to the edge of the quilt top, and then I send them back to the client. And I've not had a client come back and say the stitching was coming out on this row. I mean, I think if you left it for years and years, maybe some of the little ones would come off the side, but I have not seen it, even in my own quilts, and some sit around for years and years without being binding put on them. Sad to say. But that is the bubble clams. Did I say that? Have I been saying the wrong thing? It is bubble clams, not Baptist clams. I'm not sure if I said that correct or not. I'll find out when I go back and listen to this. Bubble clams, that is So Shabby Quilting. I did use Omni natural white thread on this one. Kept it fresh, kept it light. I didn't want to dull it. These fabrics may be a little creamier, but I just didn't want to dull it with a cream color thread. So I actually did the Omni natural white, and I think it goes very nicely. Quilt measures 53 by 70, like I said. It is in the book Strawberry Garden. So if you're loving this quilt like I am, you are going to want to make one of your own. Terry's second quilt. This is the Peaceful Baskets quilt that was done in the Sew Sampler box from April 2024 to March of 2025. We had another one of these not too long ago, but had a different pantograph on this one. So large blocks, I think these measured 18 or 20 inches, very large blocks. And then the setting instructions, you have sashing. Now, what Terry did differently, if you remember from the quilt that I did a couple weeks ago, there were flying geese units at the end of this sashing so that it created a star block right here. And Terry said, I didn't want to mess with it. I didn't want to do it. So in the sashing pieces are the same size, because to create those flying geese unit, you're actually not making flying geese, you were doing easy corner triangles on the ends of the sashing. And then when you paired that with, I believe it was a square and a square actually in the middle here. Instead, she just did the blue fabric as the cornerstone. I can't remember. I'm kind of thinking it was a square and a square, but maybe not. But by just doing those easy corner triangles on all four sides of the sashing, it created a star effect. And Terry said she didn't want to do that. Great. I think that is lovely to make the quilt your own. You do it the way you want to do it. And so she liked just the cornerstone, so she used that blue fabric as the cornerstone, the same polka dot print as the sashing, but without the easy corner triangles. Perfect. I think it's just as lovely this way as it was the other way. So you decide how you want to do it. So each block was done in one box of the Sew Sampler box. So it came, you got a pattern for each one. This is the called for fabrics, which is the Shoreline fabrics from Camille Roskelley. I've seen this done in other people's fabrics as well. It's beautiful. You still can get these patterns. They are sold maybe as a bundle, maybe individual. I didn't check on that before I started filming, so I will link it down below if you're interested in this. So basically what the blocks were is baskets, pieceful baskets, piece being P-I-E-C-E, so like you're piecing them. And if you notice, the basket shape with the green overlay is the same on every one. The baskets are different shades of the blue fabric, different blue fabrics. The green is always the same. But then notice this block right here. What this is half of a quilt block. So if you can picture the other half of this one, the other half of this one, there was some confusion sometimes when people would say, oh, is that block where it should be? And yes, because if you created the whole block, that's what it would look like if you cut it in half diagonally. So that's what's coming up out of there. A great idea. I mean, it's just so neat, the different patterns designers come up with, and this is a really nice one. The backing fabric, I believe, also is the called for, also part of that Shoreline fabric by Camille Roskelley. I would call this one more of one of her medium florals. She has some that are much smaller, she has some that are much larger, so kind of a medium, and I do believe that's the called for, but obviously you can put on there whatever you want. So for this one, Terry asked for the Easy Baptist fan. So this is a great, I can kind of compare the bubble clams with the Baptist fan, okay? So this is what the Baptist fan, this is the Easy Baptist fan from Three Sisters fabric. This is the one I prefer to use. Stitches out the same way as I just showed you on the bubble clams, meaning the top row of each fan is actually stitched in the row above it, okay? And then this one shows the point all the way down to the top of the fan, but like I said, I leave a tiny gap there instead of trying to match that point perfectly. All right, so let me show you those side by side. This is bubble clam. This is Baptist fan, and you can see how this is more of a clam shape, a little skinnier. This is more of a fan shape, very spread out width-wise. Notice there are a lot more fans in this one, a lot more lines in the fan than in this one. And these lines are all uniform. They're all the same spacing apart, where these are not. They have some difference in the spacing between each one of those rows. So very cute. Very nice options. I think this one looks a little more playful, if that's a good word, a little more modern. This is much more traditional, and so I think Terry did a great job of choosing. This one is a more traditional feel to the quilt, where the Strawberry Garden feels more, it's a different type of sampler, where you could say this is a sampler as well, meaning you're doing a different block for each one. But the other one is more of a modern sampler, meaning we have different sizes of blocks. We're doing it not just on a grid pattern, but large blocks paired with smaller blocks, and really interweaving those, if you want to say, and fitting it all together. So a beautiful quilt. I really, really like this one. This one finishes 64 by 84. If you're interested in the patterns or the fabric, I will look them up and I will link them down below. But Terry, you did a beautiful job on this. I have two quilts from Elaine that actually use the same pattern, but two different fabric lines. So this quilt is called Jellyfilled. This is a Thimble Blossoms pattern. Thimble Blossoms is owned by Camille Roskelley, and here's what the pattern looks like. So Elaine says, this is the story of two quilts. She says, on Camille's blog in November of 2008, Camille posted her version of Jellyfilled. Then in June of 2009, the picture was posted on her homepage, and Elaine says she reached out to purchase the pattern. Fast forward to 2024, at which time I bought a jelly roll that was on sale at a quilt shop in Florida. Once back home, I pulled out Jellyfilled, which is the pattern, to see what else was needed to complete the pattern. The jelly roll was the pattern Simply Delightful by Sherri and Chelsi, and that's what this fabric line is. So she says, so she had this jelly roll. She's planning on making this quilt. So she, while in Florida in 2025, so earlier this year, she was in a quilt store that was going out of business and had fabric at 50% off. But there was no Simply Delightful yardage, so she thought another one of the lines might coordinate. So she bought a backing and borders in the line Bountiful Blooms. This is the backing for Bountiful Blooms. It doesn't match. She said, only to find out that Bountiful Blooms did not go together with the Simply Delightful. So she says, I searched online and found yardage in Simply Delightful for the borders and the backing. So you can see her borders on the edge there, and the backing I'll show you in just a minute. And so she says, I searched for a jelly roll then online to go with the Bountiful Blooms that she had the backing and the borders for. So she found a jelly roll that from that line. So she says, now I have two quilts made from the Jellyfilled pattern by Camille Roskelley, but made from two different fabrics by Sherri and Chelsi. So fun. She says the only change that she made is that she cut her border at 6.5 inches instead of the called for 8.5 inches like the pattern has. So Elaine's quilts measure 68 by 75, where the pattern, I thought somewhere it told me, I didn't print that part out. It's bigger than that, 2 inches on every side. Okay, so this does use a jelly roll. Jelly roll is 2.5 inch strips. Funny story, my son and daughter-in-law told me the other day, my daughter-in-law, well, let me back up. My son says, is there such thing as a jelly roll in quilting? And I said, yeah. He's like, what is that? He says, because my wife, our daughter-in-law, she told him that your mom knows who Jelly Roll is. Okay, so if you know Jelly Roll, he's a country singer. And I said, I don't think the two have anything to do with each other. But yes, in quilting, we have a jelly roll as well. Okay, so this does take a jelly roll. Jelly roll is a pre-cut that comes usually in a, at least for Moda, they come they're called jelly rolls. Other ones call them different things, but they're 2.5-inch strips cut with the fabric, which is normally 44 inches. And it's all coordinating prints from a single line. So this is the Simply Delightful line by Sherri and Chelsi. Notice everything, this pattern is made up of everything is 2.5 inches except for your borders, okay? So that's what a jelly roll is. And then for this quilt, you also need 1 3/4 yard fabric, which is your outer border, which Elaine has done in the aqua color. And then you need a yard of the inner border, and then also for your binding. So Elaine has the dark blue as her inner border, and I assume that's what she'll use as her binding as well. And then you need your backing fabric. So very, very cute. This, like I mentioned, is the Simply Delightful. It feels very summery prints, just fresh and bright, and it just feels like summer. You have polka dots, and you have these are like small squares. The lines go vertical. That would be horizontal. The lines go horizontal, and the next ones go vertical. You have some circles that just are pin dots all the way around to make the circle. You have the English paper piecing type of look, and this print was made into a cheater fabric for the back. You have some X's here, you just different colorways here. This is what the backing fabric is, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So reds and yellows and blues, and you even have some pinks and aquas and some lime greens. It's just very summery feeling, and just a very fun line. So all of the blocks are made with 2.5-inch strips. So we have a 2.5-inch rectangle in the middle, and then you're creating another rectangle around that, and then followed by that same inner piece of fabric, then makes your square on the outside. No sashing in this. Every square is just right against the next one. And coordinating prints to put together. I like this polka dot one with all the colors with the yellow in the middle. It doesn't look like Elaine swapped blocks. By that I mean, she doesn't have a block here with the polka dot yellow and then polka dot and then switch that with yellow, polka dot, yellow. I don't know if I haven't measured anything to see if that's possible. Usually in a jelly roll, you have 2 strips of each color or each fabric. So I don't know if that's possible. Like I said, I've not measured these blocks to even see if there's enough for that. But you just coordinate your yardage. So pinks and reds together, blues and aquas together. Here's red and red. The orange she's done with a stripe. There's even some grays in there, and the grays she's put with another colorful print that has all of the colors in it. But then notice, usually in every row there is also a block that is just strips, just like this one. So it has the top and bottom, and then the second and fourth rows are the same, and then the middle one is a different one. And it just breaks up the pattern. So there is one row that has 2 of these blocks, there is one row that has none of those blocks, and then every other row has 1 of these, and all done in different colorways. So just a way to break up the pattern. Here you can see that striped block is in this one. In this row it's all the way over to the right. This bottom row she has mixed yellow and the lime green color, and even some white in there. She kind of changed that one up, so it's not just, it's not 1 and 5 and 2 and 4 that match. She changed it up, which is really nice too. And then at the very top you can see the aqua one up there, and then this second row here has none of those blocks in it. And let me see if that is the way. Yeah, so the pattern shows 1, 2, 3, 4. The pattern actually shows 4 of those blocks, and just interspersed in different places. I think this quilt would be a great one if you are, first of all, it's a quick and easy one. You're using 2.5-inch strips, whether you use a curated line that's put together already cut for you, or you're using your stash and creating your own 2.5-inch strips. But what I think this quilt would be great for is if you're teaching a young teenager to quilt, I think this would be a great pattern. I think they would like this pattern, that it's enough playful, enough modern feeling without being too difficult. And I think this would be a great one to teach somebody younger to quilt. Let them pick out their favorite jelly roll, and all they're doing is matching 2 fabrics, 3 in the case if you're doing the stripped block. And I really think this would be a great one to teach a young one to quilt. All right, the backing fabric is one of the prints from that line. I like this as a backing fabric. Very busy, very fun. Now, the pantograph on this one, I'll show you her second quilt in just a minute. Elaine wanted different pantographs on each one, but kind of similar. And so for this one, we used Giggle. And this is what Giggle looks like. So Giggle has has some spirals. You can see spirals, not super tight ones, not ones that even, move in they don't have a lot of movement in the spiral. It's just one partial spiral, and then it comes back out. It does come to a point, notice that. And then besides the spiral, you just have some paisley type designs. One paisley, there's no echoing with the paisley, so it doesn't even look like a feather type design. It's really just the paisley type of shape with some other swirls, even some smaller swirls that I would call more like just a little curly Q there. And so I would, as compared to the one I'm going to show you on the second quilt, I'd say this one has more spirals than it does the paisleys. I do like this one paisley that's it's not tipped like most paisley prints are. It's almost like a little bubble type of an elongated bubble or something like that. So I did this, let me see, about the size you're seeing here. A little bit bigger than this size. So this middle section here is 1 row, and where you're seeing this spiral dip down and this spiral dip down, that is in the row above. Where you're seeing this spiral come up and this paisley come up, that is in the row below. So it's this whole section that is stitching out as 1 row on this pantograph. I did use Omni natural white thread that matched with the freshness, the brightness of the fabrics, and blends in nicely. It's not something that you really see. That's why I printed out the pattern to see, because I think you really need to get in close to even see the pantograph, to see the stitching, because the fabrics are so busy and so bright. That's really what catches your eye on this one. So that is Elaine's first jelly-filled quilt. Let me show you the second. This fabric line is also from Sherri and Chelsi, but this one to me has a much more spring-like feel, more muted fabrics. It's not the bright colors of summer. It's more muted, and you could maybe even say fall, but I feel like with some of the pinks and the rosy colors, it tends to a little bit more like spring. So you have a lighter aqua. You do have a little bit of orange in here, but then that is paired with more of a mauve color and a pinky, orangey pink kind of color there, almost a peachy type of color. More of the aqua prints. There is a mustard yellow. This green is a little different than what we saw in the other one. It has a little more of a blue tint to it, I think, behind. And so it's not quite a lime. It's more what I would describe as an olive green is what I picture it as, what I see it as, and the mustard color. So the prints on this one, you have tiny flowers here, but all of them appear to be, not all of them, but very similar to this type of flower here, that where you're seeing it's a 5-petal flower, kind of rounded, a little bit of leaves on it. This one with the olive color print, same type of flowers. There are some daisy prints on this one as well. This white print that you're seeing has a little bit more daisy type, or almost like a a purple cone flower or that type of a flower where you have the center part that pokes up and then the petals are drooped down is what that flower looks like. So a little bit of all different kinds of flowers. I see daisies again. Notice some of the other prints that aren't floral. This one, this gray, has a very much like a cable knit type of sweater look. This one is a gingham, but how this one is done different is the lines are striped. So it's like almost like a music score. 5 stripes, horizontal and vertical, and where they overlap is where your darker gray is. Very simple floral in that one, more of a tulip shape in that flower. And then you just have some simple white flowers, not really colored, just on top of some of the others. And here's that same cable knit. And then you can see the gingham prints in the in this olive color and then in the mustard color. So same thing, she laid out both quilts exactly the same. The top row has the square and a square and a square. I guess it's a rectangle and a rectangle and a rectangle. The first 2 blocks, and then the third block is a striped one. The 4th and 5th are the rectangle ones. In the second row of this one, it's all the rectangle blocks. Here we have the striped one. And notice she used different prints in this. She mixed it up. So not every time is it 1 and 5 match and 2 and 4 match with the third one in the middle. She's really changed things up, and it's just beautiful. This one has 2 striped blocks in this row. This row has 1 striped block at this end, and then on the very bottom we have the gray striped block at the bottom. So then her borders on this one, she has a mauve color border, and then the busier or the medium type of floral in the aqua print for her outside border. I like that this first skinnier border is a simpler pattern. It really gives your eye just a resting spot before moving on to the busier I mean, it's still soothing, but it is a busier print. There's a lot more colors in it. There's a lot more flowers in it, where this first inner border is very simple. It's just 1 flower. It's done on a grid pattern. It's just 2 colors. You have the mauve with the white on top of it. And so it's a place to rest before we move on to the outer border. Again, she cut her border 6.5 inches, where the pattern calls for 8.5 inches. I love that. She made it her own. Nothing wrong with that. I think we should do that more often and not feel like we have to be wrapped into what the pattern says. The backing fabric is the same as the border print, but it's done in a different colorway. So this is the white background, and then your flowers are the mauve and the blue. You have little berries that are the golden yellow, and then the leaf prints there. So that is the backing. I like that. Very beautiful. So for the pantograph on this one, I did use the Omni Natural White thread, just like I did on the other quilt. But on this for this pantograph, we went with citrine, and there's what this one, for some reason, this one printed out smaller than the other one. I don't know why. But this is citrine. So notice citrine, you have more of the paisley print and almost in a feather type of shape. So we're doing a paisley, a paisley, a paisley. It comes back down here and it does the paisley again to move itself on top of this one. So a little bit of echoing there, and then it's doing another paisley, 1 on this side, 2 on this side. So not a traditional feather, but it kind of gives a hint towards a feather type of design. It echoes itself a little bit and then comes around and does a nice swirl. Now notice the chunkiness of that swirl. Even when it comes into the inner part of that swirl, it doesn't come to a point. It stays nice and rounded in the middle, and then it echoes out and then echoes that paisley a little bit before moving on to the same design that then would print in the other direction. It's going to look just like this one, but then pointed downwards. And then so the red line, I think you can see the red line at the top is where the row above that comes down, and then the red line that you're seeing on the bottom is where the next row would stitch and what it looks like as it nests up into there. So then let me show you these two next to each other. So many similar features. You have the paisley and you have the swirls, but in this one, which is Giggle, I feel like you have more swirls than you have paisleys. And then this one on the right, which is the Citrine, I feel like you have more paisleys than you do swirls. The swirls on this one are very pointed. The swirl on this one, there's only one right here is where that swirl is, and it's very rounded. A little more echoing on this one, just as it moves, as the pantograph moves back up to the top in order to then stitch out that paisley print coming down the other direction. I feel like the nesting is maybe a little more on the Giggle one. Notice how this spiral right here comes down into the design underneath it a little bit more, but it's still very cohesive. This one I still feel is very cohesive if you shrink your lines down enough. So many times you'll hear me talk about when you are shrinking your design, or not shrinking your design. Shrinking your design is one thing. It's the size of the stitching that you're doing. The other thing is how much space you put between the rows. And I like this, the way this is printed out. Notice the space in between, like this paisley and this echo line, about the width of my finger. Now notice the spacing between this line up here, this row up here, and the next row. Again, it's about a finger width spacing. If you leave much more spacing in between the red line here and the next row that's stitching out, you're going to very noticeably see where one row is, and then you have your space, and then another row is, and then you have a space. I like to shrink those down so that the spacing between my rows is very similar to the spacing in the pantograph itself. So how much space does the designer give between this swirl and the paisley over here? That's kind of the same size that I want between the rows as it stitches out. I think that keeps it much more cohesive looking, where you're not going to have a noticeable difference between one row and the next. And that's the look that I like. I like it to look like a cohesive pattern, a cohesive design all the way down the quilt, and not noticeable. I want you to have to work at it to see where the where one row is and where another row is. So I like pantographs that nest well together, where when I shrink the rows, especially this one, notice this one, I feel like it does it a little bit more. Notice when I shrink those rows, this spiral right here comes way down into the other design, and I like that. I think that makes it even more difficult for someone to decide where one row starts and the other. Not that everybody sits and picks it out, but I think you notice it if you leave much more spacing. So again, on this one, the spacing between the different elements of the row is very similar to the spacing between one row and the next. So complementary pantographs, I feel like, but just a tad bit different. So that is Giggle and Citrine. This is Elaine's second quilt made with the same pattern. And again, I think this would be a great quilt to use if you're teaching someone that's newer to quilting and wants a simple pattern, but wants one that looks a little more complicated, but it's really not. And all you're doing is using 2.5-inch strips. They can pick out a jelly roll, super simple. Just go to the quilt store and find one that they like. We're not having to make lots of decisions, and maybe make the quilt, the center part of the quilt, let them finish that part before actually deciding what borders you're going to put around or what the backing is even. Let them get the center part done and then maybe take it back to the store. So can't wait too long, because some of these lines go so quickly, as Elaine found. When you think you're buying something that's going to match, it may not. So you may have to get back pretty quick to find the same line for your borders and for your backing. But great job, Elaine. I think you're going to be happy having 2 jelly-filled quilts. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're making lots of time to quilt as the fall weather is coming in. It feels so good to be able to look outside, see the changing leaves, and then also to spend time quilting and sewing. I hope you're making lots of time for that. I will be heading to Minnesota here very soon. Our daughter Maggie is due with baby Evie any day now, and I'll be spending a little bit of time with her. I have been working ahead a little bit, so there should not be a break in videos. You'll still see a video come out each week. But know that I am spending some time with a new grandbaby, so excited about that. So anyway, until next week, every quilt is worth finishing, so I will see you next week.